What makes you choose a book and then actually read it? Usually something piques your interest, right? It could be the cover, it could be the title, it could be that you open it up and read the first few paragraphs, but usually the story or the issue sounds interesting. There's something in there that makes you want to keep reading. But what makes you finish the book and read it all the way to the end? Well, usually it's the same thing, right? There is something in that book that is continually interesting. And that is what authors do. We continually create situations, have the reader ask questions that, or pose questions that the readers will ask themselves, and that they will continue to read in order to get the answers to those questions. So today what we're going to talk about is how to create these hooks so that the reader gets initially hooked into your story and then continues to stay hooked all the way to the end.
You have a story to tell, but you don't know where to start. Let me show you how to free your story. I teach you how to write and how to dig deep in your soul to release your story and make a difference in the world.
Welcome to the Julia Amante channel. If we're just meeting, I am Julia Amante, and I am a women's fiction author and also here on Fridays to give you some writing tips. So let's talk about that hook. What in the world hooks readers? Now, let me tell you just a little short story. When my son was a little boy, our family went out to South Padre Island, and my husband was trying to show him how to fish. So he got some bologna and he put it on the hook, and then they went out to this little dock. And my daughter was very, very young at that point, and I was just kind of hanging out with her and playing while he's teaching him how to fish. And my son says, well, why bologna? And I kind of was thinking the same thing. I'm like, I'd always heard of worms or something for fishing. Like, why bologna? And my husband said that it was because the bologna really attracts the fish. So there's a smell and it makes the fish come. But you could use all kinds of things. You don't just have to use like a worm. You can actually use special baits that the fish will be visually attracted to. But for some reason, the bologna creates a scent that the fish like. But it depends on the fish too. So you have to know your fish, right? We as writers need to also know our fish. We need to know what our readers want. We need to create the right hooks to attract them. And the first thing that we need to understand is our own genre. But whatever we're writing, what are the hooks that those readers like? So if you think of your genre, right, what are the typical tropes, or what are the things that readers like to see again and again and again and like to read? This is your hook. This is the bologna, okay? This is what's going to initially attract them. So if a reader goes and he sees your book and says, oh, okay, this is a story about a family who gets their child abducted, and the whole book is going to be about how they try to find the child and have, and deal with the police and all of this, right? So that's a common story that you see in these type of thrillers, and, suspenseful type of novels. And, there's different versions of it, obviously, but this is your hook. So the reader says, oh, I love these type of stories, right? Or you have a romance. I just saw on social media where people were saying we're getting close to the holidays here. We're going to start seeing a lot of those romances where, a powerful big city girl goes to a small town and falls in love with the small town boy, right? Or the cowboy. Why? Because this is a trope that we tend to see in holiday movies, right? So we need, first of all, to understand what those hooks are so that we can start with that initial hook. Okay, but that is only the beginning. That's just your hook. So if your audience comes and looks at the hook, right, and tries it out, and it doesn't, and the rest of it isn't attractive, or they don't like it, then they're going to go away, right? Just like the fish. If the fish comes and tastes the bologna and says, this wasn't as good as it smelled, so I'm leaving. I'm not biting that. I'm not going to get hooked on this because I don't really care for it. So they come, have a little nibble, have a little taste, but if you don't deliver on the actual story, then you're going to lose your audience. And readers are attracted to provocative ideas. They're hooked by a certain trope, but that's not going to have them read a whole book, right? So they are hooked by provocative ideas, interesting issues, relevant to their life, relevant to the world that we live in, so that they can kind of sit back and say, oh, okay, I want to enjoy this story. I want to see where this goes because it's different. So it should be recognizable, but it should also be different enough that they are attracted. So it's fresh, the story's fresh, the story's different, the story's interesting, and that is going to get them to after they're hooked, to continue to keep reading. So let's talk about how we're going to get them interested. What are we going to do? One of the things that I like to do is to look at how nonfiction authors do it. Nonfiction authors are going to tell us, give us that hook, have that hook first, right? And then say, let's say it's a book on finance. So if you read this book, you will make all this money and you will not die broke. Okay, wonderful. I'm interested, right? I'm hooked. And then as I start to read it, what do they do though? They tell you at the beginning what it is they're going to tell you. So they make you this promise. I promise this is what I'm going to do. And then they do it, right? They start to tell us give us all the tips, all the things that we need. And then at the end, they sort of summarize it all for us. Now in fiction, we're going to do something very similar. I just finished reading a book called Plain Truth by Judy Picoult. And it's about an Amish girl who has a baby, gets pregnant and has a baby. And that is a hook right there, right? Because if we know anything about the Amish, they're not going to, and she's not married or she's not anything, she's just a young girl. So we know that that's odd, right? That's not going to happen. So it's a hook because it's like, okay, how did this Amish girl get pregnant and have this baby? But it's not just that. The baby dies and she gets accused of murdering the baby. And so that is the larger hook, because now we've not only taken an idea, but we have created this question, right? Why in the world is this baby dead? And did she actually kill and murder it? What happened? So you have your hook, and Jodi Picoult probably pulled this out of the news somewhere, that there was some real event, because she tends to do that. The books that you read from her usually have issues that you see out in the world or out in the news. So now that she's hooked us though, right, we're going to keep reading to see what happened. Did she actually kill the baby? And then there's a slight little twist there where we see her, we watch her have the baby, we watch her give birth to the baby, but then the next morning when they find the baby is dead, then she says that no, she never gave birth to the baby. She didn't have a baby. And we know that she did. So it creates this question like, well, wait a minute, is she lying? Is there something wrong? We want to find out what's going on here, right? So it deepens that initial story. So like the nonfiction book, there's like, this is what I'm going to tell you, right? This is what the story is going to be about. But then as we move on, we realize that, okay, well, here are the, here's what's going to happen. Here's the twist. Not going to, in a fiction book, we're not giving you tips, but we're developing the story where you're going to learn more and more and more and more. And they're going to create more and more questions that are going to be answered through the book. Now, readers enjoy these little twists and turns because it makes it interesting, right? To see what's going to happen next, and they don't really know what's going to happen next. So you want to continually have these twists and turns that are slightly unexpected so that the reader stays hooked, the reader stays interested, and they ask new questions about what might happen next. A fun game to play is to say, okay, well, this is how it would normally happen. This is what would happen. But what if it didn't? What if we did something different here? What if we changed it to something unexpected, right? So if something is naturally supposed to happen a certain way, but all of a sudden you change it to something different, that creates the hook, that creates interest. So for example, let's pretend that we have a character that needs to go to work, right? And he's going to meet with this important client, and he's told that if he doesn't meet with this client, or if he's late, or if he does anything wrong, he's going to lose his job. But on his way to work, he gets in an accident, and this ensures that he's absolutely going to be late for work. So he gets out of the car, he's angry, angry, he's upset. And of course he's upset because he knows he's going to lose his job. And we've been told he's going to lose his job. So far, nothing really is unexpected. Of course he's going to be angry. Of course he's going to be upset. But let's say that now he gets out of his car, right, to talk to the other person. And before he turns around to look at the person, the other driver is already out of his car and he's pointing a gun right at his head. And he says, "Get back into your car and drive." Now it's unexpected. That's not what we're expecting. We're expecting that he's going to be late to work because of the accident, but we weren't expecting that this was going to happen, right? So that creates that twist, that unexpectedness, and now we're wondering, okay, now what? What's going to happen to this guy now? So these twists and these surprises make your story interesting, and it makes the readers want to keep reading and want to see what's going to happen next. Okay, so you want to make sure that you have those because those are continual hooks that keep the reader reading. So where should you put these hooks? Well, everywhere, right? So obviously we want to have them all over the place, but we have these sort of strategic places that we want to have them. You want to have them at the end of scenes, and you also want to have them at the end of chapters. Now, not every scene has to be this amazing hook, right? And even not every chapter. However, those are the places where people will tend to put books down. So they're like, I'm going to read till the end of the scene and I'm going to go to sleep. And that's what you don't want. You want them to keep reading. So you don't want them to put the book down at all. So we want to have these hooks that they're like, oh man, now I have to keep reading. I have to read one more chapter. I have to read one more chapter. And that should be the feeling that your reader is getting because you're creating these hooks at the end of these scenes, at the end of these chapters. So you want, for example, your editor, your agent, your reader to feel this way, to be all excited about your book. Now, when warning is that you want to deliver on the hooks. You don't want to create a hook that you don't really deliver on. So you don't want anything gimmicky. Okay, so it needs to be something real. So the guy, that pulls the gun and says, get in your car and drive, can't just say, okay, just kidding. I really just wanted you to take me to the next place because I'm late, right? No, it really needs to be a bad guy. It really needs to be something that we need to worry about. So it can't be something like that unless you're writing a comedy or something, right? So you have to deliver on the hooks that you put into your book. So the art of creating a book that is interesting and that people keep reading is to add these hooks, to add these interesting things along the way that makes the reader want to keep reading and continually asking questions. Our job as writers is to create these compelling stories that have continual questions throughout the story that the reader poses these questions that the reader is going to need to answer and want answered. And if we can do that, we're going to be creating an interesting book, an exciting book that the reader is going to love and be interested in and want to come back and want to continue reading and then come back and buy your next book. So I hope that this has been helpful, give you a little idea of how to create hooks and that you've enjoyed it. So if you have, then please hit the like button, hit the share button, and hit the subscribe so that you can be notified the next time that I have a book, which will be next Friday. But you'll get the notification bell that you know that the video has been posted. I will see you again next week. Thank you for being here.